All right. Now we're moving on to the stage of actually creating PerformanceMax ad campaigns in your Google Ads account for the OpenCart platform. Just a reminder, for your PerformanceMax to work, you need a functioning merchant center and properly set up conversions. This is essential. There are separate videos on how to set this up if you're watching this in parts, or as separate videos. There's a full video where you can see the entire process. So, what do we do? What? I recommend that you create your PerformanceMax campaigns in the feed-only format. They're very easy to set up. It'll literally take you less than a minute to create this type of campaign through Merchant Center Next. It's called feed-only, not shopping or anything like smart shopping, but specifically feed-only. Why use this particular campaign format? Let me explain. Because this feed-only format will use information from your feed specifically for targeting. I very rarely come across situations where product names, descriptions, or similar details were so poorly formatted that Google couldn't understand what your product was about. Feed optimization is still important and definitely worth doing, but in any case. So, when we set up your ad campaigns in this way, it will take you the minimum amount of time, and the effectiveness of these campaigns will be quite high, because your money won't be wasted on something completely irrelevant. Important. Now we'll go through step by step what needs to be done to create this. It's very easy, and we'll definitely spend time on setting up PerformanceMax specifically. How do you create ad campaigns? We go into our Merchant Center next. On the left, there's a navigation panel. In it, we find the ad campaigns section. Visually, it's no different from what you already have. Yours looks the same. We've already created one ad campaign here. Of course, you can edit it, but I'll show you how to create a new campaign. Click on New Campaign. After that, we're offered the option to launch all products. Set the budget. For now, I suggest you set it to 1 hryvnia. And let's name this campaign, say, PMax. And let's add, like, video OpenCart, like this. Create campaign. That's it, the campaign is created. After that, we go to our ad account, go to the campaign section, and refresh our page. Then we go to the campaign section, and voila! We can see this campaign very quickly. After that, I suggest you pause it and tweak the settings. So, in this way, creating a campaign is literally just one step and done. The campaign is ready to launch. The next thing we need to do is go through the basic settings. I'll explain why certain settings need to be configured one way or another, so you can understand the logic for yourself and it doesn't feel like some kind of black box that's unclear to you. So, let's start with the goal. Usually, all campaigns created with Merchant Center Next are launched with the goal set to sales. This is the ideal option if you are an online store aiming to track purchases. Be sure to select the purchase goal for this ad campaign, so it knows it needs to drive purchases. We set up purchases in the previous step. The next thing we absolutely have to do is scroll down to geolocations, where we need to show our ads, and select your location for displaying them. Why is it important to choose your own location for ad displays? Because with Merchant Center Next, the ad campaign will automatically be created for all countries. You don't want to advertise to all countries, do you? Right? That's why it's important to choose the country where you'll be launching. Right now, it says that the account doesn't have products for these locations, so usually check which countries are specified in your feed settings. Here I have Ukraine. The language was set to Russian because my feed was in Russian, but I don't know why it's giving an error. I'll have to look into it separately. Alright, next. We select this setting. We want it to target only people who are in this location and not anyone else. Why? Because usually, for example, if we choose, say, Kiev as the targeting method, right? So, if we select Kiev and we don't choose this particular setting, it might include geo-targeted impressions outside of Kiev as well. And what does it say here? This merchant has no products for this location. So, I'm checking here why the system says I have no products, even though they've been approved in Merchant for a long time. All the merchants match up, everything's fine, everything's okay for Ukraine. Most likely, it's because we just created the ad account, and it doesn't see the products yet. Because when I go to the All Campaigns and Products level, there's nothing here yet, so this error should probably disappear. If for some reason this error doesn't go away for you, if something happens, just message me and we'll look into it, because I really want to keep improving the quality of the content I make. So, let's keep going with the settings for now. Alright, we're done here. I've explained to you why it's like this and not otherwise. Next up, languages. Which languages should you set? Usually, you need to set the languages that your clients speak. In Ukraine, it generally won't be a mistake even if you leave all the languages selected. Why? Because our circumstances are such that there's a large group of people who, when they come here from other countries, already speak and search on Google in other languages, unfortunately. So, it will be a mistake. You'll basically catch them in your targeting. The system determines which language to show people content, ads, and so on, based on the language people use to search on Google. So, basically, it won't be critical. If it's another country or you want a more reliable option, you can leave 3 languages, English, Russian, and Ukrainian. That definitely won't be a mistake. I'll leave it like that. Next, since we want to create a feed-only ad campaign so that it uses information for targeting in the ad format. These are product ads, so I highly recommend, I suggest you turn off all these checkboxes. Will this cut your reach? No. Will it make things much worse? No. What do these settings mean? For example, the video says that it can automatically, based on your creatives, which we haven't added here, it can create a video clip. In reality, it's very basic. It's basically a simple edit where your product images are shuffled around. I don't see any use for it at all. As for the text ones, it means that it will either create some automatic text ads. Will you worry about whether it pulled them correctly from the website or not? That's a separate question. And secondly, it can use the dynamic search ads feature. For now, it's too early to think about that. We're sticking to the proven format for ad campaigns. There's one more setting I want to point out to you, which might come in handy, or maybe not. This is brand exclusions. Do you need it or not? At the start, I usually don't recommend excluding your branded queries. So, for example, you have some SEO, you have your branded queries, and you don't want your ads to show up for them. Remember, if you don't have competitors bidding on your branded queries, then this is a good option. But if, for example, your competitors' PMax campaigns are showing up in your organic search results, then it's questionable whether you should exclude them. I'm just showing you where the setting is, but whether to enable or disable it is up to you. Of course, this mainly concerns organic brand searches, when people Google your brand directly. And now we move on to the most important settings you can have in PerformanceMax. These are the budget size and bidding strategy. To avoid making this video too long, I'll give you a very brief overview. PerformanceMax only works with 2 strategies, either focusing on conversions or on maximizing value, with or without a return on ad spend limit. Which strategy option should you choose? To choose the right strategy option, we need to understand your specific budget capabilities. The larger your budgets are, the more likely you can go for more, sophisticated strategy and targeting options, like focusing on return on ad spend. The smaller your budgets are, the more likely it is that focusing on conversions will suit you better. Another nuance is that you can choose the conversion strategy if the average price of the products you're going to promote is somewhere around, at most, $12 to $15, or sometimes up to $20. But usually, let's put it this way, I'm making this video based on all the cases I'd had, kind of as an average for the hospital. Most likely, in these scenarios, it will work. No matter who you ask, whether maximum conversions work or not. If you ask about the average bill, usually that's the one that gets converted. So if your bill matches this, you can go ahead and launch with this strategy. But if you have a more expensive bill, say it's $80, $90, $100 or more, most likely your strategy options will be focused on profitability. Even with budget-level bills, you can also choose the profitability option. How do you set this profitability, and why should you set it? Because you can actually launch without any limits, since with conversions we launch without restrictions. Why is it necessary to set a limit? Why is it absolutely essential to set a limit? First of all, because this is my favorite strategy option. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. It's very flexible, perfect for scaling up, for getting yourself to 100 sales a day, no matter how that sounds. Secondly, you have to understand that the AI is very smart. It's really cool, but it doesn't know your margin figures. It doesn't understand when you're breaking even and when you're not. It doesn't even operate with the concept of revenue. There, the revenue metric will be called conversion value. Just so you know, even with these terms, it's already distorting things a bit. That's why, to give the system some guidelines about what you want from it, what return on investment you expect, it's worth specifying it. The only real criterion I can recommend is that, ideally, you need to calculate your break-even point. I'll leave a link here somewhere to my old video on how to calculate this break-even point. It's not difficult, you'll manage it. It's not some complicated math, just a very simple formula. You just use it to do your calculations. The only thing I can recommend is that, usually, if your break-even point is above 800, 900, or 1000%, you should set it so that it's at least 200 or 300% below that break-even point. So, for example, if your break-even point is, say, 1200 or 1500%, you can subtract 200 or 300 and try setting it at that level. But if your break-even point is, for example, 800, 900, or 1000, you can start somewhere around 750 to 800. The average indie, well, look, this depends on your product and the cost per click. If your cost per click is less than 3 hryvnias, then of course you can play around with higher profitability rates, for example. If your cost per click is above 5 hryvnias, most likely you'll need to set it closer to the average profitability values for Ukraine. For Ukraine, the average starting profitability values are from 500 to 700. Previously, they were much higher. You could start from 2 or even 3,000. Advertising campaigns used to work very well, but the introduction of these unrestricted strategy options has led to Google lowering the default profitability settings. So these are some of the basic recommendations. Once again, I want to say that everything is individual. Maybe it's worth simply explaining how to calculate profitability for your projects. I'd be interested in doing that. Let's do a series of calculation iterations. Write in the comments for which price ranges or for which products you have difficulties calculating this profitability. That's why this strategy is usually difficult for most stores, because it's hard to grasp how to calculate it correctly. Because if you set the profitability too high, you'll squeeze the traffic too much and miss out on conversions. If you don't push it enough, you'll just be wasting money. There are these kinds of nuances. I've given you some guidance. Even if you start with the market average, which is 500 to 750, you can set it at 600 and you'll never go wrong. For Ukraine, that's an average value, and you can raise or lower it later depending on your situation. So, we understand we've set up the profitability settings together. What do we need to do next? Set the budget amount. How big or small should the starting budget be? Look, there's no formula for calculating the optimal budget. There isn't one, it simply doesn't exist at all, zero. How do you figure out what budget size to set? Look, it all comes down to a metric you don't know yet, you can't see it. This metric is called the average cost per click. You don't see it yet. So at first, you'll start with small budgets, check your cost per click, and then, if needed, switch to higher budgets. The average starting budget for almost all stores. It's usually somewhere from $8 up to a maximum of $12. That's roughly the equivalent. If your actual cost per click is less than 2 or 3 hryvnias, it makes sense to reduce this budget to even $4 or $5, depending on the traffic volume and how actively this AI will be getting it. The higher your cost per click, the higher your budget should be. On average, it's between 8 and 12. Generally, the more money you set at the start, the better it is overall. But if you don't have those financial resources, it's better to set a smaller amount. How can you tell later if you set a good budget or a bad one overall? By the way, here's an important nuance. The higher the profitability you set, say 600, 700, or even 800%, the more your budget should aim for those higher numbers. Starting from $10, maybe 10, maybe 15, that's about where it'll be. Why? Because you need to give the system a signal that you have money, that you have the funds to spend. So, you've gone through the settings. After that, you can officially go ahead and launch your ad campaign. That's it. What do you need to do next? After you've launched your ad campaign, you need to monitor and pay attention to a few key metrics. The first is how actively Google starts spending your money. What do I mean by that? It's about how much it might overspend your advertising budgets. Remember, Google allows itself to exceed your budget by up to twice as much. If you see that your start is pretty smooth, the first 3 or 4 days are the most important. You go by them. If the start is very smooth and slow, that's great. It means everything is going according to plan, steadily, and there aren't any super sharp A/B tests happening. The budget is really small, and it will be specifically trying to find the audience you need. Basically, 7 to 10 days will be enough for you to gather analytics on conversions. That will be sufficient for you to later increase budgets in either direction. In short, it's not crucial. Next, if you see there are very sharp spikes, a ton of traffic, or you're overspending either because of the cost per click or just too many clicks, reduce the budget by at least half. Look, it's better to keep it running on small budgets. You'll be able to stretch it out longer, and it will spend the budget more economically. By the way, here's one of the life hacks that maybe the guys on YouTube aren't telling you about. Why, for example, do they talk about the conversion strategy for launching, and Google people say you should start with the conversion strategy first? This applies both to lead generation and to these. Why is that? This strategy really likes the right proportions in terms of budget allocation. If we read Google's manuals, and I hope that when you want to use a really serious AI tool, you've at least read a little about how it works. You don't have to read them, that's up to you. It says that for maximum conversions, you need a budget ratio of 10 times your cost per conversion, or 15 times the cost per conversion. If no one is managing your cost per conversion, you set it yourself, right? So, the smaller the budget you set, according to this proportion, it will aim for the lowest possible cost per conversion. So, when you set a budget of about 300 to 400 hryvnias, which is roughly equivalent to almost $10, well, 400 hryvnias, depending on the exchange rate, it turns out that it tries to aim for 10 times less. Of course, it won't be able to do that, because we're not working in a vacuum or some kind of simulator. This is a real market with real users, clients, and competitors. Remember that in Ukraine, supply still exceeds demand. Unfortunately, I hope this will be fixed soon and everything will get better for us, but for now, that's the situation. So keep that in mind. And usually, with such ratios, this campaign allows you to get a conversion cost of up to 50 or 60 hryvnias. Super! Awesome! Wonderful! Everything is perfect. Just remember this ratio. I'm not telling you that you need to set 3,000 or 4,000 hryvnias. I'm saying that the smaller the budget, the better this ratio is maintained and the cheaper the cost per conversion will be. But if with these settings you don't have this check up to $15 or you can't get these conversions, unfortunately, your only strategy option is target ROAS. And target ROAS is absolutely great. 90% of the market works with it, especially large retailers. They use it. It's excellent, perfect. Learn how to calculate your break-even point. So, of course, the more diverse your product assortment is in terms of price, the more likely it is that you need a more detailed approach. You need to calculate it in detail. That is, there's nothing super secret about the algorithms behind this ROAS, but it does require some, well, thoughtful actions when setting it. So, some people might not like it, some people do. It's a great strategy. You just need to set this ROAS correctly. There's no perfect value. I told you the average to start with. You can set it and then fine-tune it, raise it if you need more, or lower it. Usually, from the value you set, the system will actually try to deliver at least double that. So, if it gives you exactly double at your set value, that's your ROAS. For example, well, double OI, what am I saying? It would be more accurate to say 200% more. So, most likely, that's fantastic. Try scaling up by increasing the budget. But if you see that it delivers less than that ROAS, then there's no point in working with such a low return. You need to either raise your ROAS or cut your budget. Yes. So as not to drag this video out any longer, that's it. Basically, we've covered all the important steps for launching PerformanceMax on OpenCart. It's not super complicated, you can easily handle it. It's a really great tool. I recommend the module. The only issue, well, the only situations where you might run into problems with this module, just write to me, for example. Maybe we can sort it out together. That's usually when your templates are somewhat modified, but no one is immune to that. Most of you copy these sites, move them somewhere else, or do something similar. That's normal. That's why this OpenCart platform exists. It allows you to be flexible, unlike Shopify and other platforms. That's its advantage. Everything can be fixed. So I really like this module. It's very easy. Everything is in one place. If only someone made such a great module for WooCommerce, it would be priceless. That's all. That's it from me for now.